I can't see.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I was gonna say, can you, because I'm fixing to put my glasses in here, but I can't. I'm thinking of that.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes, and yes. Earl said I got 21 minutes, so saddle up. Here we go. Now, we're going to talk about trichomoniasis. This is an old subject, but it won't go away, is what I would say. When I left school in 1989, when I was taking food animal medicine courses, and we were doing the bovine reproductive diseases, this is what I was taught. And I just went ahead and slept through it because I wasn't going to work out west. Didn't pay any attention to it. If you weren't going to work in the Rocky Mountains or you weren't going west of the Rocky Mountains, you didn't have to worry about the trichomoniasis. Wasn't going to happen. That's where the disease was, and there's obviously a reason for that. What is there out west that we don't have as much of?
Free grazing.
What? What'd you say?
Free grazing.
Yeah, great. They got all that Bureau of Land Management land out there. Cattle co-mingle. They've had a problem with it for a long time. Okay, and so we don't have that. So we didn't have anything to worry about supposedly. And then in the 90s, something happened out west, and this is what we think. Nobody knows this for sure. This is just an educated guess. Droughts out west, and cattle did something they don't normally do. They came from the west, came east. I can remember Craig checking a bunch of cows at a ranch, came out of Nevada or Arizona, I can't remember, back about 94, 95 in that time frame. So cattle came from the west, came back east. And this was my first encounter in 2006. Prairie checking cows, there's about 700 or 800 head of cows on this ranch, and we were doing their fall calvers. Come up with one group, and everybody starts scratching their head and saying, what's going on? Everybody wants to know. I'm having a hard time because you have to understand where I was taught we don't have this problem, and all of a sudden I'm going, well, even though I slept through it, it looks like we got a trick problem. And there actually was an animal science graduate there helping, and he said, we don't have trick. I was taught that when I was at OSU in animal science. And I said, that's what I was taught. Anyway, he had 62 bulls. We checked them. We got 6 positives. And that was my first encounter of trick. And that was about the time that maybe a little bit before that Texas and Oklahoma and some of the other states started seeing a problem with trick. We got 6 positives. That was back when we were just culturing. We should have recultured the other 56 again. We probably would have had more positives. It didn't matter. He took all 62 bulls and sold them. I'm sure they just scattered right back out into the rest. Everybody got, so, oh boy, we got some good bulls here today. So I'm sure they went right back out into the country and were used. So anyway, this led to this in 2008. This was for the interstate movement of bulls. You cannot bring a bull into Oklahoma unless he's trick negative. Unless he's less than 2 and is guaranteed a virgin. That's your only exception. Now, rodeo bulls get an exception. They come in and go out, or if they're going to a slaughter facility. That's the only way you can get a bull into Oklahoma. That led to 2011, when we basically said the same thing to people in state. You cannot change ownership of a bull without getting a trick test in Oklahoma, unless it's less than 2 and is certified as a virgin, or you're going to slaughter it, or you're going to feed it and slaughter it. That's the only way. Sale barns are no exceptions. So, which reminds me, I told somebody a while ago, you worked the sale barns like I did for 14 years. I got 14 codes. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got one every year. I'm worried. Randy's messed me up here. I'm going to have to go buy a code. But anyway, 2011, first year we started getting data, and you can pretty well see we're scattered statewide. But does anybody see something kind of interesting here?
Jeff Farley.
What?
County Farley selling bulls up here.
Exactly. You got this little thing here. Over 50% of the cases are coming from. That was eye-opening, because I'm going to tell you, Arkansas and Missouri immediately went to looking at this at that time, and their laws changed real quick. This will be 2012. Rest of the state almost looks like it's cleaning up a little bit. You still got a problem in the Northeast. Over 50% of the cases in the Northeast.
You ain't got Clayton County. You slipped down in
Marty, you get a raise. You get a raise.
2013.
You slipped the ball down to me.
We still got over 50% of the cases are in the northeastern part of the state. And then this is a slide Dr. Hall sent to me, and I don't think he's looking into the future. This is his slide. I think he typed, that's a typo. But as you can see, we've still got over 50% of our cases are coming from northeastern Oklahoma.
That's cool.
So, why is there a problem in the Northeast? These are some ideals that the state people have come up with. One, they think there's a lot of cattle in the Northeast, just a high concentration. And we do know that after we found, when we started keeping data, we do know that Missouri and Arkansas have a problem. I mean, that's facts. I'm not going to step on anybody's toes, but I've been told there's some traders in northeastern Oklahoma that may be contributing to this. So, I say I worked sale barn 14 years. I know what cattle traders can be like. So, the terrain, a lot of, I know Dr. Hall thinks that there may be some more commingling there just because water gaps get washed out a lot more there than they do anywhere else and that type of thing. The other thing I would say, and it's just a guess on my part, that when, as a veterinarian, you hear that there's a problem, you become more aware of it and you look for it. Because I know there's some people that will tell me down southeast, well, we don't have a problem. Well, it's probably because they're not looking for it. And probably because the guys don't want them testing down there, would be my guess. I'm from that part of the state. I know some of those guys down there pretty well. They wouldn't want you to find that. So, what is trich? It's a venereal disease. It's highly contagious. It's going to cause infertility and abortion in cattle. It's going to infect the reproductive organs. I like this picture here. This gives you a pretty good idea what the size of this organism is. That'll give you a reference there. Most of you have probably seen a semen sample, and that compares it pretty well. Just a little bit bigger than a sperm cell. It lives in the bull in these little, what we call crits, or foals, whatever you want to call it. The older you get in these bulls, the deeper these get. That's why it survives so well in the older bulls and why you have the problem in the older bulls. There is some evidence that young bulls, if they get it when they're young and they're rested, they may get over it. I would not trust that. I would not trust it. But there has been some cases that have been proven that. In the cow, it's going to get in at breeding. It's going to get in the vagina. You're going to get a vaginitis, which is going to go on into the uterus and cause a metritis, and that's what's going to kill your embryo. It's going to happen early because cow probably gets bred. She probably is bred at the same time that she gets the disease. So, occasionally you'll get a really big, fat uterus in there full of pus, a pyometra. Very unusual though, and we know that there are some cows out there. It doesn't do anything. They've got the organism. They'll have the calf. Everything will be fine. And we know they're out there keeping this disease prevalent. Clinical signs. You will not see any clinical signs of this disease. very, very unusual in the cow or the bull. So it's hard to tell your owner or your producers what's going to happen because you're not going to know it. You just don't see any clinical signs.
Now,
Yeah.
on going back with the kind of question, what is the basic cost to test a bull, and then if you have it in a herd, because some cows can carry it, what's the practice? What should you do there?
The cost, when I did the cell barn, and the cost to me went up, but I didn't raise it because I knew I was quick. I was charging $75 to do the test. Okay, that's probably close to what I think most people will. Now, you can pull samples. They are allowing us to pull samples, which will reduce the cost because what they'll do there is they can combine up to 5 bulls at a time. If you have an owner that's got several, he wants to combine, get them all tested, they can combine 5 bulls at a time and test and see if they get a positive. If you get a positive, you got to go back and individually test all 5 of them. But if you don't, it saves you quite a bit of money. So, but I would guess about 75. I'll say here in a minute, but the main thing is cull open cows is the key. And we'll kind of talk about that. Most of us, your producers will never know until they pro check. And they come up with, like I did in that situation where we had half our cows open and everybody scratching their head. The guys that don't take their bulls out, those are the hard ones. They can have this for years before they ever realize it because cows will continue to calve. It just takes them about 16, 18 months to have a calf. So, I've just got a few cows. I pull my bulls out, but there's been times I left them in. I wouldn't know. I get busy. I thought that was spring calver. What's she doing calving in the fall? Why didn't I get, or am I forgetting, You've been around, people forget. So those are the ones that they can go for a long time and never know they've got a problem. So, but true diagnosis is finding the organism. And we can do this one or two ways, culture or PCR test. And PCR test is pretty well taken over. And what we're looking for in the PCR test, we're just looking for the DNA. And it's a pretty simple procedure. Get a pipette, syringe, and we're just going to scrape up in that prefuse, suck back, get some material. We put it in the pouch. They're going to take it to the lab. We'll send it to the lab. They'll incubate it for a couple of days, and then they'll run the PCR test, which looks for the DNA of the organism. And that's about 97 or 98% accuracy. If you do the culture, and there are a few states east that still are going to require 3 negative cultures. You have to do them. They got to be 1 week apart, and you've got to have 3 negative cultures before they'll consider it negative. So, a lot more trouble. Most people have gone to the PCR. A lot easier to deal with. Treatment. LA200 doesn't do anything for this. I've had several clients. I'll just give it a good dose of LA200. No, it's not going to do anything for us. It doesn't cure it. If you get in the literature, you will find some treatments for it in foreign countries. We are not allowed to use those drugs in food animal medicine in the United States. So there's nothing legal. And you can't even use them in an extra label manner. They're off limits to it. So there is no treatment. Prevention and control. Biosecurity and the things that go along with that is your first line of defense. Good fencing. Biosecurity is always in disease prevention the best. Just don't ever let it get in your herd. You can keep a closed herd. It's a good idea. Be sure and go to the local sale barn and purchase as many open cows as you can. I worked sale barns forever. I try to tell people, nobody brings their best cow to the sale barn, okay? And I know people will have a hard time understanding that, but should quarantine all new animals. Once again, we test. It's hard to test for this in cows. We don't have as good luck testing for it in cows. You can take scrapes in the vaginal tract, but it's not as good as sanitation. That's just biosecurity. Other things, by law, we need to test bulls prior. You know, the rules we have there. Texas, they recommend you test your bulls every year before you ever turn them out. That's their recommendation. Back to the old bull, young bull thing. Young bulls don't have as much trouble as the older bulls due to this crypts, the deepness of those crypts. They're going to have more trouble. Define breeding season. If you pull your bull in and out, you'll get a hold of the, get on top of this disease long before it you die. If you run it year round, you'll have a hard time. Cull open cows. That's my biggest pet peeve when I was in practice. There is no reason to keep an open cow as far as I'm concerned. Kyle, we did a meeting a few weeks ago, and that guy, I don't think I convinced him. I think he wanted to keep them because he spent too much. I know people spend a lot of money, but when you have an open cow, as far as I'm concerned, all you're doing is breeding infertility into your herd. So there is a vaccine. The vaccine does not prevent disease, but it will shorten the time of it. So even if if you vaccinate and a cow gets it, she still has a much better chance of going ahead and getting bred because she's going to get over the disease much faster. It'll take 4 or 5 months for those cows that get infected with it. And this, it shortens it down to maybe 30 days or so. So they'll go ahead and get bred. So that's the advantage of vaccinations. And you got to use it according to the label. You use it the first time, they require 2 doses. You can use it once a year after that. How'd I do, Earl? I'm trying to get done. 21 minutes.
You're right on the money.
Anybody got any questions?
Golly.
Sure.
When we look at those issues, and the other states made laws and all because of Oklahoma, and there's surrounding states that require you to do a trick test, no matter whether he's a virgin or under 20. Why is Oklahoma still taking? We talk about the traders and all, but we're still taking people's words. I guess the question is, how do you certify a virgin bull?
And that's just the word of the person that does it.
Yeah.
And that may be revisited. I don't know. I know Texas is pretty well watched that. They don't want you. You're going to have to.
I was against it at first, but after you get to know some people and you see that they're selling bulls, and I couldn't trust that person. Mm-hmm. So how can I trust somebody I don't know?
Right.
And I think Texas is onto something,
right.
Especially considering we have a problem.
Right. And I know, if you look at that, it's less than 2% of the bulls they're finding have got it, and you think, why worry about it? It's not a big deal till it infects somebody, your herd or a person you know. Then it becomes important.
Any of those cases that were found, were they found through the process of going through the sale barn, and the point to where when the bulls went home, because they were going to go home until the test has come back, did they go get those bulls and find them with cows, or did they actually maintain quarantine on them? Because the people that buy the bulls at the sale barn don't have facilities to trap bulls until they know they're clean.
Right, and there's nothing that I know of that they find on that as far as, are they quarantined when they show up? I don't know. I had a paper, I fill it out. It says you got to quarantine the bull. That I did it when I was working at sale barns, and you're not to run it with cows. It's all spelled on there what you're supposed to do. Now, whether they abided by that, I don't know. Now, I never got a positive one in the sale barn, so I was lucky from that standpoint. But there was a few.
So those numbers that you showed earlier, those are just reported cases, or is that from sale barns? Or
no, that's every case, every bull that's tested in Oklahoma now. Automatically, the results of that are also forwarded to the state office, Dr. Hall and them. So that's all the bulls they've got that are tested.
From sale barns and all other.
Right. Anything that has to be reported to them now. So that's all those. That's just not sale barns.
Yeah, a lot of. I know in the Northeast, a lot of bulls were actually picked up because when they did break check cows, just like what the Doc's example, they got in a wreck. and they took it back, looking at what could happen, and trick's been the issue in several cases.
Right.
So what do we do about people who are like loaning bulls?
Can't loan them. I mean, you got it. If you read the law, it says barter, loan, lease. I mean, they've spelled it out, but in the law. Now, if they break it, what do you do?
Well, one of the guys in Northeast that leases a lot of bulls, he, it just used to be a lease deal. Now, all the bulls, he's still leasing bulls, but they, in his deal, it says they're all trick tested. So whether that gets him around and makes it legal, I don't know. But that's how his promotion has changed.
Right. If they're supposed to be checked within 30 days.
Let's say they have to be checked.
30 days,
After
but then they
every
change. They're supposed to be net negative within that 30 days.
Do you know how long it takes to show up, like if a bull's infected?
Not exactly. I don't exactly. Okay. I know it's not going to take long. Because, I mean, bull breeds cow today and he's got it. He goes and breeds another one. He's transferring it like that. Okay. So he can do it immediately. Now, it's going to take a little while for those organelles to multiply and grow. So he's complete. But he can breed one today. If that cow's got it, and he goes and breeds another cow, she's got it. Like that. So.
From the time that you test them, like in the cell burn or whatever, how many days does it take for those tests to come back normally?
Normally, if you do the PCR, I mean, it takes about a week. It depends on when you get it in there, but usually a week is what I would. I'd send mine in on Tuesday morning, and I do it on Monday. I normally got them back Monday, the following Monday. That's what I usually got.
It looks to me like the thing that it would be easy to be confused with is an outbreak of Vibrio, because you're going to have cows recycling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you check and you see
Well,
cows,
but you're not going to get right. They're not going to recycle for 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Okay.
Right.
I started to say there was a pretty large herd in the county I used to work in, and they had some bulls come up positive out of a pretty big 50 or 60 bull herd. And the vet there working with Rod Hall, they just quarantined those bulls for 30 days and then retested all of them again that had come up negative to see if they had some positives, and they did. They had a couple that come back up positive.
Right.
And I don't know if 30 days is their spec that they always go by. But
They will. You will. Like I said, if we'd have tested more of those bulls again, we'd have got more positives, I'm sure, than the 6 we got. But he was finished at that point. And back then we had no laws. I mean, he just took them to sell barn and sold them. I'm sure some of those went back to the country.
That's kind of a good question. If you come up, not saying what's ethical, what's lawful. If I have 130 cows and 50% of them breed, and we'll find out we've got trick, and I say, well, the open cows are fleshy, I'm going to haul them to Tulsa and sell them. Is there anything that says, okay?
Well, the cows, there's not. Now, the bulls,
Well, the bulls.
no, that's been a
The
complaint.
cows, I can just.
Right, that's a complaint. That nothing on the cows, unless you ethically want to go tell them, hey, these came from a trick positive herd. But I don't know very many people it's going to be.
I just didn't know if there was
No, cows don't. So.
Let's go buy some cold cows.
Let me say, I was supposed to ask what's on the horizon. I'm going to mention these questions. Parasite resistance in cattle. That is a fact, and it's going to become more important. I think within the next year or so, there's going to be butting heads between the parasitologists and the people that manufacture dewormers. Okay, it's going to be hard for people that are selling products to start telling people to use those judiciously, okay? But that's going to be a big issue, and it's starting now. I would watch for that. Veterinary feed directives, this is supposed to take place in 2016, the way I understand. This is where all feed antibiotics that are put in feed that are really been kind of over the counter, like your chlorotetracyclines, Thailand,
Anaplasma.
Yeah. That,
Well, your ionophores, your ion.
no, the ionophores are not included. It's just the antibiotics, the feed antibiotics.
Well, I know that they're labeled as antibiotics. but
Right.
not
They're,
under
they're,
different-
they're putting them in a different category. So at this point, they're not included.
Well, like anaplasma.
Right.
Okay.
That's going to be
Well,
taken off
dude,
the market.
That will be, and I'll have to either mix up myself with a vet's
Right.
or
You'll be able to buy them. You're just going to have to get one of these. It's a form that has to be filled out and signed by the veterinarian.
how much are you gonna charge us for that?
This is what I will say. This is where the problem's going to have with this. For my good clients, that I would never have charged anything for it. For the people that call me once a year to have that C-section done at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're going to get charged for this. That's just going to be the fact. Because the vets don't care if they mess with them or not. Okay, that's just the way it is. You don't want to mess with them. And so that's where the people are going to have problems with this, those types of people. But for the people that were and to be honest, I didn't have that many of those people that called me like that, really. I had really good clients when I was in practice. My ranchers and those guys, I would have never charged them for that. I would have just filled it out and gave it to them. That's just the way I would have been. It's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be easier for the veterinarian because he's not got to meet the veterinary client-patient relationship that he has to on a prescription drug. So he's been excused from that. They've tried to make it as easy as possible. I know this is government, but the FDA is straddling the fence here. They just got sued over this by a group that says they don't have the right to do this, and it wasn't the cattle people that were suing. It was a group that wants us to go to Congress. I know they wanted Congress because they want them out, period. And they think they can get it done if they can get it in Congress, that nobody will be allowed to use these, period. So I'm not going to fault the FDA on this. I think they're doing their best not to lose, letting people continue to use these. I really do. Sometimes government doesn't do that, but I think that's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to straddle the fence and make everybody happy. Animal disease traceability, the USDA is really going to push this. This has been brushed back, but if you don't notice, I kind of say this is like a wild cow sale barn. We keep shutting gates till we can get her down. Today it is so much harder to get a cow out of the state to another state than it ever was. You've got to have her ID, everything about it, and they're going about this slowly but surely. They're going to make people get cattle, everything identified at some point in time. And the fact is, we're out of all the major cattle producing countries in the world, we're the only one that doesn't have a national ID system. We don't have one. So I think it's coming. And the last thing I'll say, if you haven't noticed, in most of the cattle journals and stuff, there's been a lot written about bovine respiratory disease this year. Big conference in July about it. We've got more problems with this today than we did 20 years ago. The numbers bear that out. They're going to really start pushing back to the cow-calf producer. They think that's where, if they can get the cow-calf producer to do all that castrating and dehorning and vaccinations on the farm, they think they can get a lot better handle on this disease. And I think you'll see a lot of people in the next year or so really trying to push cow-calf producers to do that type of stuff. So that's all I have.
On